All right, we are going to get started here with our next big task, and you get to watch me do this live. Who never said science wasn't hands-on, right? So this is going to play off of some notes that we were doing before on topographic profiles, which that blank should say side view. So we're looking at the side view of a piece of land, and we're going to be using the notes that we did from probably last week. Sometime in one of those videos we drew these contour lines, so you need to have this map before you can do our next steps. Some other things: you want pencil, you want a ruler or some sort of straight edge. You can just use like a clipboard or the edge of a folder even, it doesn't really matter. And we are going to also need a sheet of paper that has what I call factory edges on them. So that's nice, completely straight edge piece of paper. We're going to use that in just a second. All right, so let's take a look at this map here that we had done already. And what we're going to do is we're going to use this grid area down below, and we're going to fill in what we call a topographic profile. And so what we're going to kind of do is take what we're looking at from above, which is this map, and we're going to kind of turn it on its side and see what would the mountains or the hillsides or whatever it is this looks like, what would that look like if you were actually standing maybe down here on a boat on Blizzard Lake looking at the area back here. So that's what we're going to do. First step is to take your ruler or straight edge, and we're going to kind of go right across here. I want to go right through point B, I believe. Let's just set that up just like this. So we're going to go right through that 123 dot and literally straight across. So, you know, just trying to get it so it'll go straight across and then pass through that point B right there, and we will be good to go. And just draw a line, a random line that goes right across your whole map. And that's going to be kind of our reference point of, okay, I want to look at the profile across that area right there. All right. Once you get your line down, you'll notice that the size of this map is very similar to the size of this little grid down below. And that's an important fact because we don't want to have a different size graph for a map that is a certain size. So that's what we're going to work with. First thing we're going to do is we're going to use our scale right there. And we're going to actually set this thing up so that this is actually a proper graph. You notice this is like graph paper from math, but it doesn't have the vertical lines on it. It just has horizontal ones, and that's okay. That's what we want. So watch what I do here. I'm going to use my straight edge piece of paper. I'm going to put it along the scale. And I'm going to mark 0, 1, 2, just like this. Just make little tick marks on the edge of the paper. 0, 1, 2. Okay, and then I can do a few more. You can do as many as you want, actually. And you'll see why in just a second. 3, 4. And we'll do 5, 6. I think that should do it. So watch, when you come down here, what we're doing is we're actually going to use this lowest line here. This is our horizontal scale of distance, actually. So I'm just going to kind of make these marks, these little ticks that you see right there, which I hope you can see all right. Yep. We're going to make those appear on the bottom of the graph. Just like this. Okay, and if you run out of ticks, you just slide it over, just like this, and you can extend and use the same thing that you just used to make the other ones, and just slide it over because it's to scale. So, and then if you want to be fancy, like I always do, I'm going to go back and label. This is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, and this is our distance scale. And we're in miles on this map, as we see there. Now the other scale on the kind of the y-axis or the vertical, that's going to be our scale for height or elevation or altitude above sea level. So if you look on this map, we're kind of dealing with elevations that are between, well, 0, and it goes as high as, looks like 125. So you want to go a little bit above the highest value just in case. So what we'll do, this over here, I'm going to turn this on its side and I'm going to write elevation. And this is going to be in feet. And we're going to start putting values on here. And you can try a couple of different things here. So here's 0 in feet now. If you thought every line was maybe 5, watch what would happen. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55, 60, 65, 70, 75. So you see how that wouldn't make it up to 125 even, not even close. So we can't go by 5s. So what if you went by tens? So 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, 110, 120, 130, 140, 150. That's actually probably going to work out just fine. Now, do you have to go and label every single line? No. What I'll do is I'll label every other one to keep it cleaner looking. You don't want numbers everywhere on these things at any point. So 10, and I'll label every 20. So there's 20, 30, and then 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, 110, 120, 130, 140. And there you go. So now you've got a nice, neat graph with axes labeled and numbers to scale along the axis. And now we can actually make our profile. So this is where it gets weird. So we're going to take the same straight edge piece of paper that we were using before, just find a clean edge, and I'm going to throw it down over the map, so right along this weird line that we just drew, because that's where I want to look at my profile. So I'm going to put this right there on that line. First thing I'm going to do is mark the edges of the map with big dark lines on this piece of paper. That way, if you hit it or bump it and it goes like this or whatever, you can put it right back where it's supposed to be. And you'll notice that it fits down here as well, which you want. So we're going to line it up. And what you're going to notice here is that some of the contour lines that we drew from before actually seem to go and disappear behind this piece of paper that I have down. So they're going and disappearing. And those are the points that I'm very, very interested in. It looks like the way I drew this, I've got one sort of right here at the edge. That's about 100 feet according to my map. So other than that, the other ones, we're just going to make little tick marks. Every time you see a contour line like this 80 contour line right here, disappears behind the paper, we're going to make a tick mark right there. This is our 60 contour right here. Disappears behind my paper right there. The 40, you got to be careful, and a lot of you might have drawn these slightly different, and it's okay. There's a 40 that kind of makes a little triangular shape, shark fin shape right there. We're going to make both tick marks for that. So that's 40, and then it comes back around right there. So that's where it disappears. If you look, see how it disappears behind my paper. This over here is your 60 again. This is your 80. Here's 100. Here's a 120. And here's another 120. And here's a little 100 right there at the edge of the map. So when you kind of pull this away, it kind of looks awkward and not evenly spaced. That's okay. That's what we want. So watch, I'm going to go back and label all these little dots that I just made, or tick marks, so that we don't forget what they're actually for. So this was the 80. This is a 60. This is a 40 and another 40. So I'm labeling every single one. 60, 80, 100, 120, 120. See how that one kind of loops around? And then this is the 100 that loops around right there. So now I'm ready to use these to actually make the profile down below. So I'm going to move this up a little bit and watch how this process works. It's kind of neat. Notice that this fits right across the grid, just like we said. And on the edge of the very left side here on the vertical axis, that's supposed to be 100 feet. So if yours is slightly off, like the 100 is a little bit in closer or in on this line or whatever, that's okay. You can kind of guess where your line comes on, but I'm going to have a dot right about there. So watch, I'll just put this right where I see the 100 there. All right, that's about 100. Now the next one over was 80. So what you do is, without moving your paper like this or letting it slide side to side, you slide this down until you get to the 80 foot line right there. And then you plot your 80 that we made right on it, just like that. So you see the dot there? So I have a 100 dot right at the edge. Yours is going to be somewhere around there. It might be over off the edge, so you could be a little higher than 100 or a little lower. Depends on how you made your map. And then you see 60 is the next one, so you slide it down and you make a 60 dot. Make them nice and dark and big so you don't lose track of them. Now the next one down is 40, and I have 2 in a row, so that's kind of cool. You can just make one then the other. So there they are. Okay, right on the 40. Then it goes back up. So now it's going to go back up, slide up to 60, and make those marks, or that mark, that dot. And then 80 again, we slide up. And I've got 100. And make sure I'm not sliding too far left or right while I do this. There's a 100 dot. Next is 120. There's our highest elevations right there. And then there's another one right next to it. And then it goes right at the edge back down to 100. And we'll talk about what to do with that when we start getting our line drawn here. So there's 100. So hopefully you can see in this video it's starting to come together. You can almost see what the land is actually doing, right? And that's the whole idea. That's what a profile actually is. So here's the next thing. Any graph, you want to connect dots or points with a line. Now on ours, in this case, we're going to do a nice smooth kind of, we're not just going to go point, point, point and make it jagged. We're going to just smoothly draw, and I'll show you what I mean by that. I'm going to get over here, and I'm going to start with my 100 here. Now, if your 100, maybe this contour line was up here or something like that, then you're going to come on to the graph a little lower than 100. If it was, if your 100 came down, I'm sliding this down so you can see, if your 100 contour was down here somewhere, then you'll come onto the map a little above 100. It doesn't really matter. I'm not going to be too particular on this, but for me, the way I drew it, it comes onto the map right at about 100. So I'm going to start my line right about there, and you just kind of smoothly draw. Smoothly draw. Now I'm going to start to curve a little bit. And down here, this is right where Tornado Creek is. Here's what's going to not happen. You are not going to draw a straight line that goes across, because isn't there a river in here, and isn't there, you know, inside a river it goes down below. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a little dip. It doesn't have to be huge. I'm probably going to make that a little more pronounced, but not too big. You don't want to go way down. Like, you don't want to do something like that. That would be not realistic, because we would see more contour lines here if that were the case. So we don't have those dots. So we're just going to go a little below 40 and then back up. And somewhere in here is your river. And then we just kind of keep going, nice and smooth. And when we get over here, this is where our hilltop is, right over here where the 123 and 125 is. So clearly, this doesn't just go flat line at 120. That would be like a parking lot. Nature doesn't do that or look like that. If you ever look at mountains, you don't see all mountains with flat tops on them. So what we're going to do, instead of a dip like we did before, we're going to make a little bump. And we don't want to go like way up here. That would be weird, because we know the land doesn't do that either. But we just want to go up a little bit above the maximum, and we know it's at least 125. So you can sort of guess what might happen there. So maybe it goes up close to 130, and then it just bumps back down. And then you go right off the map, following your dots. So that's it. That's a profile, and that's how you do it. So again, this is the kind of video you might want to pause at times and kind of think about what we did. If you need to rewind, that's always a benefit. You can just go back and watch the process again. But in general, you pick a spot where you want to do the profile. That's that first line we drew. We set up our scales and our axes with labels and numbers. Then we use the straight edge, and we kind of mark off the edges of the map, mark off every time we see a contour line across the edge of our paper, and then we just transfer those as dots down below. There's a faster way to do this, to be honest, but it's not accurate, and I like accuracy. I think this is the very precise and accurate way to do this process. So that's what we did, and that's what our profile ends up looking like right there. So we're going to get a lot more practice on this as we go forward here, but this is your very first one. I will say in the future, they will already have drawn lines like this for you, so you won't actually have to do that. They may actually label the scales, and they might give you more information basically than I did. We just do this completely from scratch because I wanted you to really appreciate the full process first before we start taking shortcuts on that. So that is it. That is profiles. Hopefully you enjoyed this live video from my table.